Welcome everyone to our August 2024 AA Technology Sharing Session. The idea of these sharing sessions came about during the 2023 National AA Technology Workshop. There was a common feeling that our community of technology trusted servants needed more frequent opportunities to get together and share our experience than just once a year. These monthly sessions are an attempt to meet that need. The sessions will always be the last Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. The one exception is that our December 2024 session will be on December 17th instead of the last Tuesday of December to avoid conflicting with New Year's Eve. The topic of today's session is WordPress security. There will be a 45-minute presentation from Sean, Area 34's webmaster. After the presentation, we will have about 30 minutes for questions and sharing. So as you listen to the presentation, please write down any questions or comments that come to mind so you won't forget them. We will finish at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. These sharing sessions and the format are an experiment, so please provide your feedback at the end through the survey link that will be put in the chat. For these sharing sessions to evolve in a long-term sustainable service project, we need your help. Please consider signing up to chair a technology sharing session. This will involve picking the topic and arranging the presenters. The steering committee will gladly help you with that if needed. And then you also will do what I'm doing, read from the format and facilitate the session itself. While you're welcome to sign up to chair a month as an individual, feel free also to take it on as area or group of trusted servants. If you're available to chair a session or are interested in serving on our steering committee, please reach out to techsharingsessions@gmail.com. There may be links and other information put in the chat throughout the session today, so that you don't have to worry about trying to collect it all and can listen and follow along. It will all be available here in this Google Doc. Lastly, please consider sharing these sessions as a learning group. Very few of us are experts in technology. We are just AA members that made ourselves available to help our local service entities, and because of that, we now have some experience to share. So with that in mind, let's get into today's topic. Sean.
Hello, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on whatever the case may be. I am Sean S., and this is part one of securing your AA website. As was mentioned, I am Area 33's web chairperson, serving through December 2025. The bottom line of the title slide is my service email address. My personal email address is sean@roaringkitten. So a little bit about me before I get started. I recently retired from a 30-year career in the information technology industry. That is very fresh. That just happened in July. And I'm currently in the process of launching a consulting business focused on assisting small businesses and nonprofits with their digital transformation needs. Business is Roaring Kitten Consulting. I don't yet even have a website. That's how fresh this is. So anyway, and my personal Gmail address gives away my last name, so I didn't do that. So part of why I threw that up there. All right. And where is my presenter view? There it is, presenter view. All right, so our agenda for part one today is we're going to get some basic security terminology out of the way so we're all on a level playing field. We'll delve a little bit, very brief introduction to WordPress architecture. Reason we're doing that is to understand what we are doing and why we are doing it. And then we'll get to some practical techniques to reduce your risk of being hacked. And then I've already put in a request to get another time slot on the agenda, because here's all of the stuff that I had to cut for time from today's presentation. So that's a little bit of foreshadowing for next time whenever I'm able to get on the calendar. All right, so what is security? Our friends at dictionary.com said security is freedom from danger, risk, etc., safety. I think at this point in our lives, we all know there is no such thing as 100% freedom of danger. There's always some infinitesimally small risk. We want to make that risk as small as possible. The next definition was precautions taken to guard against crime, attack, sabotage, espionage, etc. I happen to like this definition a whole lot more. And if we take those precautions, then we can have freedom from care, anxiety, or doubt, a well-founded confidence because we have done our due diligence and we can be relatively happy, safe, joyous, and free. Common security-related terms that may or may not be familiar to y'all. First and foremost, authentication. That is verifying that you are indeed who you say you are. That is ideally done via two methods. I could say I'm Bill Wilson until I'm blue in the face, but I would have a very, very hard time proving that I am Bill Wilson, mostly because I'm still breathing. Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. That is basically two or more of the following factors. Something you know, like a user ID or password, something you are, like face lock or a fingerprint reader on your phone, something that you have that you can prove you have, like your phone and your control over your phone number. Some new factors that have recently been added to the list: where you are, such as your GPS or geolocation coordinates, and or the IP address from which you are connecting, and also when you are. That's those time-limited codes that you get when you try and on your phone when you try and log into the bank. So that's a perfect example of two-factor authentication. You first log in with something you know, like your user ID and password on your bank site, and then you get a text message to your phone that they presume you have control over your phone number with a 6-digit code that is time limited to 10 minutes or 30 minutes. So by giving them that code that they sent you, you are proving you have control over your phone, and you are proving when you are with an accuracy of 10 minutes or 30 minutes. Boom, that's actually three-factor authentication. Get used to it. And with all the hacks we're having nowadays, we're going to need to invent some more factors. Delving into security, we're going to talk about an attack vector. What is an attack vector? It is a path or method that can be used to infiltrate a particular component of your infrastructure. If we're using a house analogy, one attack vector would be the broken latch on the window on the back bedroom. In contrast, an attack surface is the sum of all of the attack vectors or entry points into your infrastructure. Again, with the house analogy, your attack surface are all of your windows, your front door, your back door, and your chimney if you're being attacked by Santa Claus. So, security by obscurity. This is a somewhat controversial thing. It is not in and of itself a security posture, but I like to say it is part of a complete security breakfast. Basically, the idea here is the less an attacker knows about you or is able to discover about you and your infrastructure, the harder it is for them to identify what your unique attack vectors are. This is the reason we don't post our vacation photos and our flight details on Facebook or Instagram while we're still on vacation, because we're basically telling an intruder, hey, I'm over here, all my stuff is over here, and hey, there's no one watching it. That's security by obscurity. Authorization and least privilege, those are really dealt in much more detail in part 2 of the presentation at some later date. Basically, authorization is what you can do once you have authorization, is what you can do once you've been authenticated. And least privilege is basically you only grant the ability to do things that need to be done to do the job, nothing, and trained to do nothing more, nothing less. Those are basic terms. One other one other term that was omitted due to space is encryption. It's a long story, a big alphabet soup of different constantly changing encryption protocols. And oh, now the Diffie-Hellman elliptical curve has been, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk more about that in presentation 2. I am going to pause there real quick and catch my breath. I want to make sure I've got everyone on board here before I move forward, because if any of these are not clear, you will be lost. Okay. All right. So these are some of a list of various plugins. I've included this slide because I'm going to refer to them in the rest of the presentation by their various acronyms in brackets. And because this is AA, I need to include the disclaimer that links or references to any outside site or plugin are provided for informational and educational purposes. These references do not constitute affiliation or endorsement. So we'll be dealing with these plugins and utilities on the left-hand side during today's presentation. These ones here on the right-hand side are in part 2. If you're like a nerd, if you're a nerd like me and want extra credit, go ahead and take a look at those and read ahead for our next presentation whenever that gets scheduled. Next topic, WordPress architecture. In order to properly secure your AA website, you must understand your AA website and its vulnerabilities. So you sign up with a web hosting provider, you log into their console or their hosting panel. It's probably something like cPanel. You say, I want to spin up a WordPress instance, and it does a bunch of work in the background, probably takes a couple of minutes. And it probably creates either a container or a virtual server that contains some server processes, most notably a web server process. It's probably going to be named LSPHP, which is Lightspeed, or Apache HTTPD, which is another web server, common web server package, or Nginx. And there's probably another listener sitting there waiting for SSH connections and possibly FTP or hopefully SFTP, which is Secure File Transfer Protocol. There's also a bunch of files that get written in a well-known folder structure. In there are going to be your PHP files, any plugins that you've installed, plus your configuration files and any images or PDFs that you decide to upload to your website. And then there's also going to be a database instance. And a database, if you're not familiar with it, is think of it like a really, really big Excel spreadsheet with many tabs along the bottom, and all of the data in all of those tabs is cross-referenced to each other. This contains your user list, contents of all of your posts, etc. And then once all of that finishes up, probably in your hosting panel, you will see some reference to your database. It will probably be something like phpMyAdmin. That is a graphical user interface for directly manipulating the content, viewing and manipulating the contents of your database file. Use this with caution. It's very powerful. Sometimes it's necessary, but you can do a lot of damage, so be careful. Another terminology that you will hear quite a lot, I'll refer to it in the presentations, is SQL, stands for Structured Query Language. That is a command line way of viewing and manipulating the data in your database. Okay, so your database panel spins up, and chances are you probably have a button in your hosting panel to launch WordPress admin dashboard. You click on that, it probably inserts you right in there without prompting you for a user ID and password, which is a little bit scary. In your admin dashboard, you fire up your little website. publish it. It's got a web page, or a login page, I should say, where anyone out on the internet can log into your website, and boom, if they're able to get past your login page, they're able to get into the admin dashboard as well. That, my friends, is WordPress architecture in a nutshell. Now let's take a look at this same diagram, but look at it from a security perspective. We're going to talk about what I like to call security perimeters. So your most precious assets should be the most highly protected. In our house analogy, we store our passports, our huge collection of Rolex watches, and our gold ingots in a wall safe behind a painted portrait of my mother. That's behind my locked front door in my yard in my nice, safe neighborhood. So in a WordPress environment, the crown jewels are our hosting panel and our WordPress admin dashboard. These are very valuable targets to an intruder because with access to these, they can wreak a whole lot of havoc on your website. So these are the things you want to protect with your life. These are the innermost sanction if we look at it in terms of concentric circles. So you want to use multi-factor authentication for your hosting panel access if your provider offers it, and they should. And then we'll also look in one of the demos how you can turn on multi-factor authentication for access to your admin dashboard. So these are the two things that you will not want to keep in the wall safe behind mom's portrait. Moving out a little bit in our concentric circle login page, that is the front door to your house. You want to protect that ideally with a deadbolt. In this case, we're actually going to use some little security by obscurity principles. So we're going to take our front door and turn it into a Scooby-Doo style access to a secret passage. We're going to hide that front door behind a bookcase, and you have to pull just a specific book out to make that secret passage access visible. And then moving out, we have our public-facing website. Really, the best you can do in securing that is putting a white picket fence around the perimeter of the yard, but you want people to be able to see into your fabulous home or see into the curb appeal of your perfectly manicured yard and facade of your house. But nonetheless, we don't want people walking all over the yard and dogs doing what they do on the front yard. All right, so now moving outward, we're at our hosting provider and our web host. There's not a whole lot you can do short of choosing a reputable hosting provider. You don't have a lot of control in their environment. So I like to think of these as buying a house in a secure neighborhood where you don't, not buying the house next door to the meth lab website, and being in either a neighborhood where there's like a neighborhood watch or private security, or a police department that does not tolerate shenanigans. There will be no shenanigans in this website because we want our hosting provider to protect us from adjacent websites, and also, as we'll see in the next slide, a reputable, secure hosting provider has a vested interest in keeping all of their customers safe, both from each other and the outside world. And they also have a vested interest in keeping their own infrastructure safe. How do they do that? Or what questions should you look at if you're evaluating a hosting provider? Does your plan include TLS certificates for free, or do they try and nickel and dime you to death? The way the world is, they should include that for free now. TLS stands for Transport Layer Security. Current version is 1.3. 1.2 is acceptable. Version 1.1 and all versions of SSL are considered insecure. Does your plan include DDoS protection? What is DDoS? DDoS stands for Distributed Denial of Service Attack. And by the way, all of these links, all of these underlines are links that are in the slide deck that will be provided at the end of the presentation. Distributed denial of service attack, the best way I can explain that is, now this was not a malicious DDoS attack, but it was effectively a DDoS nonetheless. So you remember maybe a couple of years ago when Taylor Swift's Eras Tour tickets went on sale and all the Swifties all over the world swarmed on Ticketmaster's website trying to buy tickets, and Ticketmaster's website crashed. That is a distributed, because it was all over the place, denial of service because there was so much traffic that Ticketmaster's websites could not handle all of that, all of those requests. So a malicious DDoS attack would be, imagine all of those Swifties trying to get their Tay-Tay fix are replaced by a bunch of compromised web hosts that we're trying to protect ourselves from, compromised routers, compromised hosts that are under the control of basically someone that can say, hey, my minions of bots, y'all go attack this AA website because we're mad at AA. That would be a distributed, a malicious DDoS attack. Enough of that. Does your plan include a web application firewall? A web application firewall basically is it sits there and it looks at the details of every web page request you receive and say, is this legit? I can probably the best way to explain that. It's kind of like the spelling and grammar editor in Microsoft Word. It's constantly looking as you're typing and says, hey, you spelled firewall wrong. Here's how you spell it, and it underlines it with the little red thing. Web application firewall looks at your requests and any of your form submissions and says, hey, is he trying to do a SQL injection to fool my website into manipulating my database? You know, is this a properly formed request? Does it have the right syntax? Do they use a content delivery network? That's what CDN stands for. I'm not going to get into the details. In the interest of time, you can read and look it up if you are curious. Does your plan include malware scanning? A lot of the security plugins that you'll look at have a premium version to do more advanced malware scanning or more timely information about malware vulnerabilities. Chances are your hosting provider pays for the premium version of those malware scanners, so you don't need to buy the premium version for your hosting for your little website if your provider is already doing that for you. And lastly, are you keeping your account secure? So are you using multi-factor authentication? Are you disabling SSH, which is command line access into your web provider if you don't need it? So on malware, this is an example hosting provider. They give us this nice little green check mark. Yes, your website is found, is safe, no malware found. If I were to click on details, it would list all of the plugins I've got installed on my website, and all of them will have green check marks next to them. If one of them is compromised or if there's a security vulnerability, it will contain a link to that particular security vulnerability and maybe some instructions to help mitigate that. That should be provided by a reputable business hosting plan. SSH access. We'll see what command line looks like in the demo. What you should be looking for is they better not be using port 22, TCP port 22. That is the standard port for SSH. They should be using some random high port like 65,002 for a little bit of security by obscurity. Try and change things up, and please, please, please turn off SSH access if you don't need it. Or if you do need it, turn it on briefly, turn it off when you're done. And with that, let's jump into our first demo. So first up, I am going to call up local WP. I am running these demos that you'll be looking at on my local machine using a program called Local WP. It's free, Windows, Linux, and Mac. So I go in here and I can launch into my database. I can launch right into the WP admin console, and I have an option to do site shell, which will give me command line access. So I would hit on that WP admin. That takes me into a nearly default WordPress admin, WordPress install. And you can see I've created a couple of tiny little blog here. I write about cat stuff. We have a couple posts about things that are cat related. I go into the admin panel, and first off, let's take a look at our user list. And we see I have some users with various roles here, and we'll deal with roles and what these mean in part 2 at some later date. I go in here, I can see all of my posts and all of my categories, which is a way of classifying these various posts. And we'll take a look in just a minute what these look like in the underlying database. I'm going to draw your attention to the tools menu. And there are two things in here that really scare the bejesus out of me. Number one is this theme file editor. Heads up, blah, 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 you're going to be making some changes. Be careful. Yes, I understand. So in here, you can modify your theme that controls the look and feel of your website. You can also insert random functions in here if you want to do some stuff. If you are not a WordPress developer, you don't want anyone having access to this. You could do the same thing in plugin editor. You can hack all of your plugins if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't want this. I'll show you how to turn that off in one of the later demos today. All right, admin panel, let me jump back to my hosting panel. Are we doing on time? Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to launch into VS Code. That is going to take me into the structure of my file and directory structure. I'm going to draw your attention to the WP config file. This is probably the most important configuration file. It contains the username, password, and if you have your database on a remote host, basically how to get into your database. That is super secret stuff. Same thing with all of these auth keys. Because that's the reason I'm running these locally, because I knew I would be screen sharing. I would not be screen sharing and showing you all my dirty laundry if this was on a public website. Also going to draw your attention down here to database prefix. We'll see what that means in just a minute. So all of our database tables are preceded with WP underscore, which is the default behavior in WordPress. And we'll be locking that down later on. Next up, I'm going to hit this site shell. This is going to be the equivalent of SSH access. WordPress, if you did not know, can be completely manipulated and managed via a command line interface, which is really convenient if you're good with it, really powerful, but also very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. I'm going to send a command WP user list. And it's just listed all of the user IDs that we saw just a couple minutes ago when we looked at the WordPress admin dashboard. And I can do WP help user. So as you might imagine, there is a command to create users, delete users, add privileges, and do all of these other potentially nefarious things to your user database using the command line. And there's a whole bunch of other commands as well. WP help, if I can spell the word help correctly. So you do all sorts of stuff, very powerful, very dangerous. That's why if you don't need it, turn it off. We're going to exit. And lastly, we're going to go into the database tool. My particular hosting, or this local WP tool, I should say, uses admin or evo instead of phpMyAdmin. But it looks very, very similar. Over here are the list of tables. These would be all of the tabs on that massive Excel spreadsheet. Notice how they all begin with WP underscore. And I'm going to look at the posts table. I'm going to show the data. And these are all of my posts. These are the titles. And if I scroll over here, these are the post types and the slugs for these various WordPress posts. And similarly, terms are the categories. So these are all the categories that I saw for my posts. I'm also going to highlight this command right here that says select star from WP underscore terms limit 50. That is SQL, structured query language. There is a similar command called update star from WP terms where username equals admin, for example. All right, and that, my friends, is the end of demo 1 under the hood. Now for the part y'all came here to see, minimizing your attack surface. So I like to watch a lot of police procedural type programs, and a quote that I remember from one of them was, in order to catch a criminal, you have to think like a criminal. And I've heard some of y'all's strunkalogs that should not be too much of a stretch for most of you. I've co-opted that. In order to protect yourself from intruders, you have to think like an intruder. So case the joint. So here's our diagram that we now know and love. Let's think of this in terms of attack vectors. Attack vectors, as you recall, think of it like the broken window latch on the back bedroom window. First attack vector is any form element on your website, like a search form, like uploading PDF files for flyers, like your login page, that's a form. These are vulnerable to, and if you allow comments on your web page, which you shouldn't, they are vulnerable to spam comments. You can try and do a SQL injection into a comment, try and fool your website into showing you the entire user list. So that's one attack vector. So you're going to want to turn on CAPTCHAs, turn off comments. We'll talk about that in part 2 of the presentation. Next attack vector is your user list. So think of default user IDs like admin. There's a way you can guess people's guess the user IDs that are defined on the site. There's something called user enumeration. I'll show you what that attack looks like in an upcoming demo. And let's see, and then if they are able to know or are able to guess your user IDs, then or a valid user ID, then you're subject to a potential brute force password guessing. That's where they try every word in the dictionary as your password, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and your user ID, and your mom's maiden name, and your shoe size. And the last attack vector is well-known URL and file structure. WordPress is awesome that it's open source, and because many, many people know it, it's very easy to find support and it's very well documented. However, because everyone knows the URL structure, everyone knows that the default login page is yoursite.org/wp-login, and they know these 2 redirects will take you there. They can find your front door really, really easy. We're going to hide that. And with any of these attack vectors, you know, you're attacking the user table in your database, you're attacking your files, you're attacking the database itself. All of those things are a way to get in there. So we're going to look at some practical security tuning techniques. First things we're going to look at is WordPress core settings. This is more of a laundry list for someone who's following at home. One thing I will highlight is you want to delete your default administrator. That's user ID equals 1, because everyone knows that that's the first user that's created. It's an administrator, and we want to create a new, somewhat unique username. We'll take a look at that in the demo. And these are more just turning off self-registering and comments, which you want to do. All right, so I'm going to throw myself into demo 2 here. Here is my dashboard. I am logged in as user really insecure default administrator. I'm going to go into settings here, general. And I am going to make sure membership anyone can register is unchecked. That is the default password, that is the default behavior for newer installs of WordPress. Can't say whether that is the case for older installs. Next, we're going to go into discussion settings. And we are going to uncheck allow people to submit comments on new posts, because really there's no reason anyone would be commenting, and we do not want our website turning into the comment section on YouTube. That would be bad. Then if for whatever reason someone bonehead clicks that, we also want to have users must be registered and logged in order to comment, and we're going to automatically close comments after 0 days. And any comment, if anyone is able to make it through any of these other settings that we've done, comment must be manually approved before it becomes visible on the website. So we're going to go ahead and save these changes. And now we're going to go take a look at our user list with a little more of a fine-tooth comb. You may have saw when I showed you the database that admin user ID is user ID number 1. We don't want that to be the case. So what we do is we create a new user for the magic of television. I have created a new user with role administrator named grand_poobah. So I am going to log out as really insecure default administrator. And I am going to log in as grand poobah. I'm going to go back into my user list. And I'm going to delete admin. And I'm going to attribute all of admin's comments to grand poobah. Not that admin has actually created any posts, but if they had. All right, boom, our default user ID that was created has been deleted. We're a little bit safe. You'll also notice that I changed the admin roles color scheme to this red as a visual indicator to myself, hey, I'm logged in as administrator. I can wreak some havoc here. Lastly, I'm going to go into my plugins section, and you will see through the magic of television, I have pre-installed but not yet activated several plugins. Basically, all of these plugins that are linked on that slide we saw earlier. That, my friends, is the end of the Demo 2A WordPress core. I'm going to pause and catch my breath, have a little sip of water. Next up, in security tuning techniques, consider turning off some unnecessary features. We're going to use a plugin called Admin and Site Enhancements, that's ASE, to disable some things that we probably do not need. This is a little bit of security by obscurity. Now, you will see that some of these have multiple plugins, like this unauthenticated REST stuff can be turned off using ASE, or Solid Security, which is another plugin. Similarly, this version number can be hidden using ASE or WordFence or Solid Security. I implore you, if a particular setting can be done with multiple plugins, only configure that setting using one of them. Please, please, please. Otherwise, you will drive yourself crazy. And then some of these settings I've flagged as consider. These might break stuff that you care about. So use it with caution. And one of the things I like about ASE is it does a really good job of explaining what you're doing. So let's dig in, talk more about these as I'm disabling unnecessary features. So we have our plugins installed. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to activate admin and site enhancements. That creates a new menu item under tools called enhancements. Let's go in there. All right, first I am going to go into disable components. I'm going to disable comments. This actually gives us a little more control than those settings, those general settings. I'm going to turn off comments on media, on posts, and on pages. And if you have any additional post types like TSML meetings that allow comments, I don't recall if TSML actually allows comments on that, but anyway, you might see some additional check marks. You don't want comments on any of them. Disable REST API. REST, I don't even know what the acronym stands for, but a REST API, an unauthenticated REST API, is a really handy dandy way that an attacker can learn all kinds of really interesting stuff about your environment. You don't want that. You want any REST API calls to be authenticated by a known user ID. And then we're going to disable RSS feeds. You may or may not want that. If you are familiar with RSS and know, use your best call. And we're going to disable some smaller components. I'm going to expand this. So the generator tag and the version number, basically that says, hey, I'm running WordPress version 6.1.1. So I am subject to any of the published vulnerabilities of that. It's really bad if you're running like a really, really old version of WordPress. These two I'm going to disable because they're archaic. This was depreciated in 2017, yet it's still part of the code base. This says we don't need this. Again, read these, look it up. This one in particular, disabling JavaScript files on the front end, that will break some form plugins. So read this, try it, make sure it doesn't break it. And it's your call or not if you want emojis on there. If you don't need it, turn it off. If you want to use emojis, I don't think you're subjecting yourself to too much risk. It's more. And disable jQuery because we are running a modern theme and our plugins are very modern. All right. Now, before I hit save on this, disable REST API and disable the one other one version. Those were ones that could be done with multiple plugins. Actually, I think so. I'm going to leave it on these ones, but I'm going to turn it off on REST because I'm going to disable that using solid security in just a little bit. Let me save that setting. Let me go over to security. There's this option here called Disable XML RPC. This helps protect against DDoS attacks, brute force, above and beyond what your hosting provider may do. If you are just using ASE to try and secure your site, kind of Fisher Price, my first security plugin, then by all means turn that off. But Solid Security, the plugin that we'll be looking at next, does that. So I'm going to leave that turned off because I want to have that. I want to use that functionality in the other plugin. Let me save, and boom. Before I wrap this up, ASE is not just a security tool. There's also a bunch of handy features that can make administering your WordPress site a little less annoying. So I encourage you to check that out and decide if you want to use it, even if you're not using it for these security purposes. And that is the end of Demo 2B, Unnecessary Features. Let me pause. So we have turned off some unnecessary features. That's the equivalent of the white picket fence around our public website. Let's turn our attention to the yellow perimeter around our front door. We're going to do some login optimization and securing of our user list. Again, most of these features can be done using multiple plugins. Use only one. Let's go into login hardening. Grab my demo 2. We are still in ASE. I'm going to go back to go up to the login, log out portion of the settings. I'm going to hit change login URL. Let me expand this, read this carefully. Note that this methodology is not compatible with two-factor authentication yet. But if I were doing this, I would change it from login or wp-login.php and not give it backend, which it was defaulting to. I'm going to instead change it to super secret squirrel. I even spelled squirrel correctly. So this is one way to do it. I'm not going to leave this checked because we're going to do this a little more powerfully using solid security, but use what you have. I'm also going to go here to login ID type. So by default, it will accept either your username or your email address in the login field. We're going to change it to username only. Why? Because if your AA website is like mine, your email addresses are plastered all over the place, and we don't want to give them the ability to use our email address to try and do a brute force attack on our login page. And lastly, then I'm going to go down here to this last login column. What this does is it adds a column to our user list, and it keeps track of when each user last logged in. It's really great for forensic if you have been hacked, or it's another way of deleting unused old accounts if they are no longer needed. So before I hit save on this, I am going to uncheck this and uncheck this because I'm going to be doing them using solid security in, I believe that's demo 2D. Next up, I'm going to go to the security tab. I am going to limit login attempts, or I'm going to show this. Basically, this says after 3 failed login attempts, lock out that source IP address for 15 minutes. That's a way of preventing a brute force attack. And then after 3 logout attempts, it will block that, or after 3 lockouts from that IP address, it will lock further attempts out from that IP address for a full 24 hours. And then if we had any attempts here, we would actually see them in this list. I'm going to turn that off here in ASE because we are going to do that in solid security, but any port in the storm. So I'm going to save these changes. Next up, we have this thing called obfuscate author slugs. What the hell does that mean? So by default, WordPress has this URL structure where any post that username 1 has created can be listed in what's known as an archive page using this URL structure. So guess what? This default URL structure gives away our usernames. We don't want that. So this obfuscator, basically it will change username 1 to some incomprehensible hash value that cannot be used to log into our website. Let me show you a practical example of that. Let me open the actual website in a new tab. And so here are my posts by my various authors. I am going to click on Nigella S. And this is going to give me a list of all of the posts that Nigella has authored. Note the URL structure here. Boom, that gives away Nigella's user ID. A while back when I was doing the security vectors, I talked about a user ID enumeration. Oh, wow. Thank you, Brian, for that 10 minutes. How long ago was that? Okay, good. So let me do a user ID enumeration test. So let me do comma author equals 2.
I just sent that now, Sean.
Okay, thank you. All right. And
Excuse
boom.
me, can I ask a quick question? I can no longer see your slideshow. I don't know if it's just me, if I did something, but.
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh. Can others see it?
I see it fine.
I can see it fine.
Okay, thank you.
There's a view menu, Jeannie, in the top right-hand corner. Check some options there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. That was my biggest fear, that I was going to go have diarrhea of the mouth and miss someone. So, okay, so a second ago I did author equals 2. And if I were to do comma author equals 1, that would show me what my default user ID was. Now, fortunately, we deleted that user ID, so it comes back page not found. And if I were to do author ID 4, it'll give me the user ID of yet another user. That is a user enumeration attack that can be used as info. All right, so now that we know what those attacks are, we're going to turn that on and we're going to save. I'm going to go back in here and go to my web page. Now, if I click on a user ID, still shows me all of Nigella's posts, and I see her name is Nigella S, but I get this incomprehensible string. Similarly, we can obfuscate our email addresses. So basically, there are spam bots trolling every website looking for things that match the syntax of a blah, blah, blah at blah, blah, blah dot blah, blah, blah. And they harvest that, and that's why we get spam. So I do have an example of that, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip forward. So when I turn that on, now it says I have to take some extra steps, namely I have to enclose it in the short code. Let me show you an example of that in this post by Asher. Sorry, front post. And so Asher has included Sean's email address in his text. Basically, he doxed me. We don't want that. We're going to edit this post. And we're going to replace that with the syntax that it gave us. We are going to save. Taking an awful long time to save. We're going to view that post. And now to the average user, whoa. It helps if I save my settings.
Yeah, I thought maybe you missed a bracket when you did a copy. Copied this code.
I thought so too, but he has the bracket in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that. You're right.
So now it looks the same. The average to a human, it looks the same. But over here, if I were to go into more tools, developer tools, and I were to examine this element, we see that it's actually this whole span element, this whole block of several lines, basically hides that from any robots that are harvesting email address, but you can still read it as a human. Pretty darn nifty. Now, there are other plugins that I've listed on that slide that are specifically tailored to obfuscating author slugs and email addresses. They both give you a little more control than ASC, so you can read them at your leisure and evaluate. That is the end of Demo 2C. Only a couple more here. So next up, we're going to talk about traditional security plugins. All of these features are available in either Solid Security or WordPress. I personally preferred Solid Security, so we're going to look at those. And in the interest of time, I'm going to skip forward and go into common security plugins. We're going to look at Solid Security and know that all of these features are pretty well explained in either of these. It's purely a matter of personal preference. Plugins, installed plugins. We're going to activate Solid Security. Again, this is a free version, so you don't need to pay for the extra version. The only thing that extra version gives you is 30-day advance notice of all of the plugin vulnerabilities that you may have. When you enable that, you get this new security badge here set up. Both of these security plugins have a wizard that try to pre-configure settings for you. You may be prompted to select nonprofit. If you do, it'll ask, what account type do your donors get? So it might be confusing. We're going to select blog. We want Security Check Pro. Just go ahead and read that. Basically, it updates itself with current settings periodically about new vulnerabilities and new potential hack sites. We're doing this on our own website. Yes, we want to enforce a strong security password policy. Global settings on here, really no changes on that tab. We want to turn on two-factor authentication. We're probably only going to need to turn that on for editors and administrators. On an AA website, it's probably overkill for just read-only users. The firewall settings, the default is fine. I will draw your attention to this network brute force. Basically, you can contribute if someone tries to do a network brute force attack. This will contribute to the knowledge, and it's a free service. You just give them your email address, you get a free API key, and you can opt not to spam. Opt not to get promotional emails. Site scan scheduling. What this does is this scans your entire website twice a day, looking for any files that have changed in the past 12 hours. And if it has, it lets you know. It's an early indicator if someone has monkeyed with your files without authorization. And utilities, we already turned that on. Boom, next. We're going to do default user groups. That's a topic that is more advanced. However, you probably want to turn off application passwords on all of these. Application passwords, that would allow like authenticated APIs, like if you wanted to integrate your WordPress site with Google Calendar via something like Zapier or Make.com or any of those integration API tools. That's what you would do. For authors and contributors, we do not need, we can skip the two-factor onboarding prompt because that'll just confuse some of our other users. Let me go ahead and hit next. Notifications, we want these to come from no reply, and we want our default recipient for those notification emails to go to all administrators, and boom, we have completed the wizard. All right. Can I go about 5 minutes over, Brian? All right.
Brett's sharing. I don't see why not.
Okay. All right.
I don't have a
Okay.
problem with that. No, thanks, Sean.
Okay, thank you. All right, so in your dashboard, key things is Solid Security is powered by PatchStack. PatchStack is an organization that has taken it upon themselves to scan all of the publicly accessible WordPress plugins on WordPress.org, and they notify the developers proactively if there is a particular vulnerability. We're going to jump into settings and dig into these settings a little bit more because there's a couple that I want to talk about. Okay, so global settings, right to files. What this does is this allows Solid Security to actually edit your WordPress, your configuration to implement the protections that we're setting. Here's the lockout settings that give you a little more control that I talked about. We want that turned on. You can customize your messages. And that's pretty much, that's all we're going to do in general settings. Under features. So let me expand two-factor authentication. So you can actually have multiple methods. These are the methods it gives you, most notably the backup codes. So what I would do is save your administrator backup codes like to your Google Workspace shared drive. So whoever inherits admin can make use of those backup codes to get in if for some reason you get hit by a truck or some other two-factor authentication. These settings are all good. Let me draw your attention to this default ban list. You want to turn that on. Basically, it downloads a list of hacker tools that this guy, Jim Walker, maintains. And you can also add additional user agents. A user agent, if you don't know, is when you make a website request, your browser says, hey, I'm Chrome version 62. Blah, 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 blah. So this is banning these hacking tools. And the other thing is in local brute force, you want to lock out admin users because we've deleted the user admin. If anyone tries to log in using user ID admin, they're a hacker. We want to block them. We want to instantly blacklist them. So let me go ahead and save that. User groups, we already talked about, notifications. So basically, Solid Security will send you a daily email about any security-related activities. If it has to lock someone out because it detected an attack, it will send that to you instantly. And then it'll send you the scan of your file scan results. And all of these settings are generally good. Now we're going to go into advanced file access. What this does is it prevents someone from actually browsing and requesting, hey, give me a copy of your PHP or your WP config file. It says, hey, file not found. All of these settings are good. WordPress tweaks. You want to disable file editor. You may have remembered in the first demo when I went into tools and showed you those really dangerous ways that you can edit your plugin files or your theme files. Notice those are gone. That is done by that disable file editors checkbox in WordPress tweaks. We talked about this in ASE. We're going to turn that on here, or also disabling or doing restricted access to the REST API. And this is a setting that we looked at in ASE. We decided to set it here because we can force a username and we could disable extra user archives. You can read the description on that. Lastly, we're going to talk about what hide back end. This is the same thing I did with Super Secret Squirrel. We're going to hide our login page behind Super Secret. And this also allows you to hide the register page if someone accidentally checks that allow anyone to register. So we're going to hide that behind register Super Secret Squirrel. The other settings are really good. We're going to go ahead and save that. And boom, that is the end of demo 2D. How are we doing on time? 7:05 or 8:05. Okay. Lastly, these are a couple settings that only exist, that I've only been able to find in Solid Security. So I'm going to talk about these in this demo. So that's under here under tools. All right, so first off, disable change database prefix. You remember when I showed you the WordPress database? Let me go in here real quick. That's in demo 1. Launch it for demo 2. Boom. And we saw all of our tables. First character is WP underscore. We see some new tables that are added. These are solid securities, configuration, and database tables. So I am in tools. I do change database prefix. And it has replaced WP underscore with this big long string of random characters. I refresh my database. Boom, my database structure has been changed. That will prevent anyone from doing a SQL attack because they're going to assume your database tables are WP underscore. They're never going to be able to guess that thing unless they have hacked your WP config file. Similarly, you can create a new encryption key. I'm going to create an MU loader, must use. What that says is load solid security first before you load any plugins, because you want that protection the moment your WordPress starts. It will actually check the file permissions of all of your files. These should all come back green if you're running on Linux, or because I'm running on Windows, it doesn't quite match. So that's why I get some yellows. And this is purely academic. These are all of the changes that it has made to the configuration file based on all of these settings we have done. And boom. Lastly, let's see, must use the server config files. So if I take a look at my VS config, let me close the old instance. Let me launch it in demo 2. And WP config, we see that it has added a few lines up here based on the settings. It has added a new launch key. It has changed the table prefix in our config file, and boom. And that, my friends, is my time.
Thank you so much, John. Very detailed.
Thank
I can
you.
appreciate it.
Beautiful.
We'll now move into the questions and sharing. If you have any questions on the topic or would like to share your own experience on the topic, please raise your virtual hand under reactions. Please keep your shares to 3 minutes or less. If your share does reach 3 minutes, I'll give you a gentle reminder to wrap up. That brings us to the end of our session. Questions and answers, or questions and sharing. You're on. Gary.
Oh, my first. Hey, Sean, good to see you. And what an excellent presentation. And, you know, Area 33 is very lucky to have you. This is so apropos to have this tonight. It's like going to a meeting and hearing exactly what you need to hear. Just today, I was on a call over the weekend. A site that I administer for intergroup got attacked. We use WooCommerce for collecting contributions to from contributions, and there were like 9,000 $1 transactions that were done that Stripe flagged them as fraudulent. So only 10 of them actually got through, or maybe 5 or 6. But anyway, it's because we don't have reCAPTCHA on the actual submission for that, and that's an actual additional charge I just found out for WooCommerce to have that on there. So anyway, we still don't have a solution figured out yet, but it's amazing that this was the topic for tonight. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to share with anyone that is having that, that has that kind of feature on their site. That is something that came out of left field for us just over the weekend. So
WordPress, just as an FYI, WordFence, I believe the free version includes reCAPTCHA. If you are using that, or you may want to do it, I don't know how well it interacts with WooCommerce, but that may be a way out of getting out of paying the WooCommerce premium reCAPTCHA.
Okay. We have reCAPTCHA on the site for like contact us form, but doesn't seem like it just goes straight into the WooCommerce form. So
Okay.
I don't want to go into the weeds on this during this call, but that's what's going on in our world. So
Ah,
thanks.
Thanks.
you,
Good
Gary.
luck.
Leslie,
Thank you for that excellent presentation. It's good
Thanks.
to be, we have some very talented people in our fellowship, and I am so pleased you are part of our Michigan fellowship. So my question to you is, in our service site login, we have a one password for everyone to log in. It sounds like you guys have individual passwords for everyone, which will increase your security. I know there's other areas that also have the one word login. My question is, you run into difficulty when people lose their passwords. And we have this, the same with our email structure. So
Mhm.
there's two different ways they log in. One is to get into their email system, and the other is to get into the service site login, which is confidential.
Okay. Well, for the service site login, I mean, assuming that's WordPress, well, what I did to combat that is I actually used another plugin that's beyond the scope of either this or part 2 presentation called Nextend Social, and I tied it to our Google domain authentication. So instead of needing to remember a separate user ID and password, they just get the connect with Google that we see on more and more websites. And it's basically what's a federated authentication model that allows me to give everyone with an aasemi.org email address their own account, and then I would control what they were able to do using the roles. I haven't gotten nearly as much uptake from users doing that, but I haven't really socialized it. I'm kind of still in the pilot phase of doing that, but assuming the person that's lost their password is not the administrator, and I would hope someone that has been entrusted with administrator rights is using something like a password manager. And then you could just go and reset their password on their WordPress, and it's just part of dealing with users. Users going to forget their passwords. Thanks.
What was the plugin?
It's called Nextend Social.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you, Leslie. Well, tying into that, if you don't have WordPress or Google Work, what is it called again?
Space. Yeah.
Workspace.
Google Workspace, because we're not a 501c3, so it's not something that we could implement. But anyways, I appreciate the comments. Anybody else?
Oh, I was going to say one thing I would add. You can configure Nextend or many of these other social plugins. I should call them federated authentication plugins to talk to regular Google accounts. You can also turn on for free authenticate via Facebook Meta accounts. If you want to open yourself up to that, it seems like it may be worthwhile in your organization, just so your users don't have to remember yet another password. There is a value to that. You just have to be very judicious in that there's yet another plugin called Restrict User Access, or basically they can apply to get in, but you need to approve before they're actually able to get in. So that is something that is worth considering.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Karen?
Yeah, Karen Alcoholic. First, that was amazing. That was amazing. And I'm really excited to watch the replay. So let's get that Zoom replay posted soon. I was just because I have my 3 minutes. Was that Gary or Brett Gary in you talked about the reCAPTCHA and the forms and your reCAPTCHA on WooCommerce, and I just had an issue today on naatw.org where we used to use Gravity Forms with a professional license, and then we didn't, and I guess it took our reCAPTCHA away, and so we're getting a lot of spam in our volunteer forms. So I was just curious, they do use WordFence. Can I get reCAPTCHA from that? I know that I can install Contact Form 7 and you set up recreate the form and then use reCAPTCHA, because I do that in a different site. But any ideas?
That's a perfect setup for the to be determined part 2, because that's the very first topic, is talking about reCAPTCHA and form spam.
So looking forward to that. Thank you.
So yeah, like I said, Forminator is another form plugin that includes, in the free version, integration with either HCAPTCHA or Google's reCAPTCHA. And then WordFence also had, in the free version, I know I've seen fields in it for, inputting your reCAPTCHA API key that you would be getting from Google. So I haven't played with it all that much, but I have seen it in there as an option.
Can you imagine, would there be any possible way to tie that into a form? I think I need a new form plugin.
Well, I was going to say, I don't recall off the top of my head if WordFence applies that to all forms on your site, kind of at a blanket overlay level, or if it's only on your login form. I don't know off the top of my head.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We still have some time.
Well, I'm still looking forward to part 2. So looking forward to part 2.
Just to follow up, Gary Alcoholic again. So regarding the attack that we just had, I do think security, and we did have reCAPTCHA on our contact us form. And the last thing I would think anyone would do would be to hack into actually submitting payments, so I don't know what their motivation is, and maybe that could be like a subtopic on a follow-up thing, is what is the motivation? Because I'm a white hat guy. I really, you said put your, think like a intruder. It's hard for me to think like the guys that break the rules. Like, I don't understand what their motivation is all the time. So why would they want to get into, submitting $1 transactions over and over again with these emails? That there was a list of emails that they stole from somewhere. And so each one was from a different person. And I just don't know what their motivation is for that.
Did you happen to notice in the transaction logs or the attempts, it's been a while since I looked at Stripe processing, and I've never seen like a Stripe processing attack. But as I recall, in Stripe's payment processing console, you will see the last 4 digits of the card, as a way of, as kind of a checksum validator. Do you happen to know if they were using a different card number with each email address as a way of trying to use these $1 transactions to try and link up or verify that, hey, this is still a valid credit card number attached to this email address? That's the first thing I think of when I think of that, trying to actually validate the credit card.
Right.
Because
No,
then
but that is good information to check out.
Yeah, because if they can get a $1 transaction through for you, they're going on Amazon.com and ordering themselves a nice new recliner or some other big ticket item.
Yeah.
MacBook.
Another thing is they put a dot in front of each email address. So hopefully the actual owners didn't get emailed with each one of those transactions. So I don't know.
We'll see. Good luck.
Well, seeing no other hands, that brings us to the end of our session. If you have further questions or ideas you want to discuss with AA Technology community, please continue this discussion at Technology and AA Forum at tiaforums.org. And you're also invited to spend a whole weekend learning about and discussing how to best use technology for AA service by registering for the 2024 National AA Technology Workshop, September 13th through the 15th, in person in St. Louis, Missouri, or online via Zoom. Before we close, here are a couple of closing announcements regarding these technology sharing sessions. As I mentioned prior to the presentation, we are a learning group with varying levels of technology experience, from beginners to experts. And because we are a learning group, that means that you are all eligible to present at future tech sharing sessions on the topics you've learned something about on your journey of AA service. If you haven't already, please fill out the topic survey, the same one I put in the chat last month, to let us know both what topics you'd like to learn more about and what topics you would be available to present. Also, please fill out this feedback form for today's session. Greatly appreciated. Here's a link to the Tech Sharing Sessions archives, where you can find all the recordings of past sessions as well as all the links and supporting resources. The recording of today's sessions will be added to the archives, emailed out, and posted on TIAA Forum when ready, typically by the end of the day tomorrow. To be added to the Tech Sharing Session email distribution list, to be sent a reminder the week before each session, and to be sent a link to the recording the day after each session, please email techsharingsessions@gmail.com. Let's stop recording.
Now you got two hands.